right?
Left.
Sorry. Those notifications, yes. Someone's going to introduce what it does and how you download an app onto your phone and join this event. Once you join the event, you'll be able to post questions while the AG is talking. So it won't disturb the flow because it won't be visible, but you will be able to pose your questions live. So we'll get a sense about what the reaction is in the room. And what you can also do is react to other people's questions. So you can like it. I don't know if you can dislike it, but you can certainly like it to say, yes, this is a cool question. And so someone will be coming to talk to you just in a couple of minutes about how it works. So you're going to get your phones out and you're going to either download the app from the App Store or click the QR code, which will take you to the app. And then she'll take it from there. The presentations the event will go like this. We'll get the keynote address and then I'll introduce you to your panelists. You get the benefit of seeing their reactions on stage while the keynote address is going on. These things happen in seminars all the time. And then we'll take a round of questions, and if your questions are up on the system, we'll ask you, if you're in the room, to maybe ask it yourself. And for those other questions from people that are streaming from outdoors, if they are interesting and compelling, we won't go through them all. We'll go through the most interesting and compelling ones and give the people in the house the privilege of asking those questions. So with that, let me introduce the person who's going to, Veronica, who's going to be talking you through the app. And so welcome to the 4th IR way of doing seminars at first.
Cool. Hello everybody, my name is Veronica and I'm a representative from Block Platform. So if you have your phones out, you guys can either scan the QR code on the placeholders in front of you, or you can just go into your Play Store, iStore, App Store and search for Flock Events. Once you've searched for Flock Events, you can just press download, give it, give or take 2 minutes to download onto your cell phone. Once it has downloaded, you just need to give a quick sign up. So this just includes your first name, last name, email address, and an easy 6-character password. Okay, once the app is downloaded, you'll see there are a few listings within the app. Just click on the correct listing, namely AGSA Public Lecture. Once you've clicked on that, it should look similar to this. You can click on the icon engagement. There is a question that is live right now, so you guys can just give us your feedback. What do you hope to get out of today's session? So you can just describe it in one word and press send. If you'd like to send questions throughout the seminar, you can just swipe left and say questions. You can type your question and press send. And that is all from me. Cool. If you guys do need help, just maybe wave your hand and I'll come around and just give you some help.
Thanks, Veronica. Hopefully no one will be on Facebook and WhatsApp and not feel bad to use your phones. But hopefully you won't be using it for that. So if a neighbor is looking at their Netflix or their Facebook, just nudge them. I'm going to introduce Professor Alex van den Heever, who is from the School of Governance, to provide a short welcome opening address and welcome from the school. Prof Alex van den Heever presently holds the chair of Social Security Systems Administration and Management Studies here at WITS. He holds a master's in economics and has worked in the area of health economics, finance, public finance and social security. He's also been an advisor to the Council for Medical Schemes. He's published extensively in the fields of health policy, the implementation and review of health, public-private partnerships, and the regulation of health systems. He brings much more than expertise on health systems to the table. He also lectures courses on public finance, designs and lectures courses on public finance. And so from that perspective, he'll welcome you, and then we'll take it from there. Let's welcome Alex.
Welcome to the Wits School of Governance, which is hosting this event together with the Auditor General's Office. I want to just give you a very brief background on the school, so you know what the school is about, and then introduce and make some sort of opening remarks in relation to the function that the Auditor General's Office provides in South Africa. The Wits School of Governance is a postgraduate school that has teaches courses, teaches a postgraduate diploma, and also runs a master's in management, all in the fields of governance and all issues related to the management of government and public policy in South Africa. It also has a PhD program in the same area. And I think what's kind of important about the school as a whole is that it plays a very prominent role and believes very strongly and passionately in the idea of effective and good governance and ensuring that society is able to function properly through the way in which government operates and does its business. This is not necessarily happening in South Africa at this point in time, which makes a school like ours incredibly important. Maybe just some comments, I think, just to kind of contextualize the discussion on the Auditor General's results. If we had to look at the role, kind of conceptually, of the Auditor General's Office, I would often break down the issues of accountability into four major areas. There are our performance requirements, there is transparency, there is supervision, and there is consequences. And the Auditor General's Office is incredibly important in bringing out and lifting out and making transparent what is actually going on in government. I think one of the greatest concerns that we have at this point in time in that the other aspects of those four pillars that I've just mentioned aren't necessarily always operating. In particular, when you make things transparent, you expect that there are structures that are going to hold people to account. They're actually going to apply consequences to deviations from what is reasonably expected. What we are very clear on is that the Auditor General's Office is actually performing doing what it should do, and it provides an incredibly important picture of what's going on in our public structures. I think, having commented in public on the recent results as well, on various interviews that I've done, one thing that really concerned me when looking at the municipal results has been, if I give one example, the province, is the correlation between health outcome indicators and the performance of certain provinces. When you look from the municipal level to the provincial level, and then you look at their outcome indicators. One of the worst performing areas in South Africa has been health. And if I had to look at a province like Free State, which has one of the worst, has the worst now, maternal mortality ratios in the country, and you see that there is an apparent systemic failure of governance from municipal all the way up to the provincial level. It suggests that there is something profoundly wrong and that needs to be addressed and is killing people. So when you start to put different kinds of figures together, you're starting to see what the consequences are of non-performance. But what is incredibly important is that we are able to see. We are able to see what's going wrong. The question now is, what do we do about it, and what about those institutions that are not working, that are meant to actually apply consequences to systemic failures of delivery. So with that, there's a few sort of opening remarks which I hope help kind of contextualize the discussions to come. And I'm going to move forward and introduce the keynote speaker, which is Mr. Jan van Schalkwyk, and who will be giving the initial address, and he will be followed by a panel of discussants. So Mr. Jan van Skalkbeek started his career as a chartered accountant at Deloitte in 1991, where he served his articles after he obtained his B degree cum laude at the University of Pretoria. Working at Deloitte provided Jan's career exposure to a wide variety of clients and service lines and its culture where innovation, growth and transformation were highly valued. In 1997, Jan joined the Auditor General of South Africa, playing a major part in the organisation's efforts to professionalise an organisation which had just become independent from government and were trying to establish itself as a prominent player in the auditing profession in South Africa. After a major restructuring in the Auditor General's office around 2005, Jan moved into auditing, research and development, where he was instrumental in setting up processes and reworking methodology to give effect to the Auditor General's strategic intent around the relevance of auditing. In recent years, he had the opportunity to plough back the knowledge and skill gained in both the auditing and support businesses of the Auditor General's office, when he had the opportunity to serve as a corporate executive in the organisation, providing strategic leadership to 3 auditing business units in the office. In this audit portfolio, he was responsible for all audits in the Eastern Cape Province, as well as the audits of a number of national departments and entities. These include the Departments of Public Service and Administration, Energy, Mineral Resources, Home Affairs, Public Enterprises, Basic Education, Higher Education and Training, Rural Development and Land Reform, Agriculture, Labour, and all the entities linked to these. Notable public entities in his portfolio include Petro SA, CETA, Safcol, and the SA Express. In 2015, he was appointed as the executive in the Auditor General's office, where he takes responsibility for the coordination of the Auditor General's engagement with the rest of the organisation, as well as the Auditor General's international and local stakeholder programs. He also remains quite involved in the INTOSA community, most notably in the INTOSA Capacity Building Committee, which operates under the chairmanship of the Auditor General of South Africa. So throughout his career, Jan has remained committed to finding solutions to challenges faced by the accounting and auditing profession and the public sector financial management and oversight structures. So with that, welcome, Jan.
Guys, I may need a bit of help. It's such a small audience, it's going to be very uncomfortable standing here, so I want to try and move there. If you can just help me to get this thing switched on somewhere. Who's this clever people that can do that for me? It's on the bottom. Nothing at the bottom there. Ah, there we go.
Right, let's try this out. Good morning. Hopefully it's a little bit better if I go this way, because I'm going to see at least these guys, I'm going to be closer to them. I apologize to the people on the far sides, but if you feel really uncomfortable, feel free to move to the center. Prof. Alex, you did the embarrassing thing to tell people what I'm supposed to do. It's always bad news to hear the history. I apologize for that. You gave a beautiful definition of accountability in 4 areas. Just help me quickly, that was?
In your performance requirements, essentially your rules, requirements, and performance.
Okay, so the rules for performance objectives, yes?
The explicit transparency.
Transparency.
Supervisory structures.
Supervisory structures.
Responsible for applying
Consequences. Right. So the name of the game, as introduced by the Prof, is accountability, not necessarily outcomes. I think you guys have all probably seen outcomes before. And if you haven't, You did like all the people that arrived early, you flipped through this little blue book in front of you, and you saw a picture that had lots of reds, and then you figured out that this is a bad news picture. And it's going to be a very depressing talk. And afterwards you're all going to say, well, AG does what AG always do. That's to tell us bad news, and they're not actually fixing it. Is that boring or not? Probably explains why we've got open seats as well. So let's not do that. Let's do something different. Let's start with a different presentation. That's why I swapped around to amendments. Let's talk about what we're trying to do to make this better. And this is a little bit of a theoretical exercise, because the outcomes that we're talking about today was achieved before we got these powers in terms of the Act. So I'm going to show you what happened in the Act, what new powers we've got. Then I'll go back to outcomes, and then you can be the judges on whether this may or may not work. And I hope that the two gentlemen that can speak after me will be able to also rise to the occasion and talk about whether this will work or whether there's other options that can potentially make this thing work. So Prof, you had this definition of accountability. I've got a different one. Mine's probably a little bit more simple. Accountability, well, if you're like me, an auditor, I take accountability and I immediately arrive at accountancy. Accountancy is the science or the subject matter expertise linked to accountability. The accountant doesn't do anything else but do a lot of mechanical things to show accountability. So what does accountability mean for accountants? Let's do accountancy 101. Accountancy can be something very complex for a lot of people. A lot of you, I'm sure, a lot of people that we normally see say, hang on, this is very technical, this is very difficult. How the hell do you expect us? But let me tell you that accountants is actually very, very easy. My cousin's little daughter can do accountancy as well as the best job at accounting. Very easy example. Think about that thing that happens on Saturday afternoon. You're ready to prepare lunch and you suddenly figure out you've got nothing in the fridge. Ask the little girl, can you go to a shop for me? You give her $50. You ask her to go buy bread. She goes off. 10 minutes later, she arrives back. What does she bring you? In the ideal world, she brings you three things. She brings you a bread, she brings you change, she brings you a till slip. Ideal. Guys, if you never send somebody to go buy bread, even if you go buy bread yourself, you've got $50, you get bread, till slip, change. There's the full accountancy 101. It's money in, I got $50, I get a bread, I get change, and I get a little slip. You know what auditors do? They check the slip. That's it. That's it. Now, before my friends from Salga shoot, I know that municipal accounting is slightly more complex than that. There's a couple of more rules. But in essence, it's get revenue, rates and taxes, spend it on behalf of the society. Our words, there's electricity and there's water and there's good roads without potholes, and hopefully there's some money left. Well, I suppose not that we hope that there's no money left, and that we end at zero. That's municipal accounting. Money in, rates and taxes, certain services. That's how easy it should be. Now, Prof, you had the extra dimensions in there. Performance reporting. What's performance reporting? Little Linda, I sent you to the cafe. You had to bring me a bread. Either she's brought me a bread or not. It's not easy as that. Yes or no? The only bugger of that she could have made is probably to buy a brown bread instead of a white. That's performance reporting. Respect for the law. It's secret to Linda. In the ideal world, she would have bought the bread. She would have bought it from the shop. You can start arguing if she bought it somewhere else. You can start arguing a little bit more if instead of going herself, she sent Manda to go do it on her behalf. Especially if she paid a little bit of my money to get Manda to go do it on her behalf. And you can argue a little bit more that instead of bread, she went up, she bought drugs. But that's respect for the law. So there's accountability. The financial side, did you get change? Is there a little slippy? Performance management, did you bring me a bread or not? Did you stick to the law? Did you do it yourself? To respect the law, did you buy bread instead of drugs? That's accountability in my mind. Again, granted, there's a couple of more rules in accountancy, but that's the essence of it. Anyway, so normally
people see our results and they talk about the fact that it's incredibly bad news. There are all sorts of reflections on it. They talk about political will. They talk about all sorts of wonderful things. But at the end of the day, that ends at the point of somebody must do something. And as auditors for years, we've been in that situation where we said, it's not our job to do anything about this. It should be the accounting officer, the guy that's in charge. It's the department, the director general. If there's a municipality, the municipal manager. Surely they should do stuff about it. And for that matter, if we read the legislation, there's other people that can go intervene. There's the municipal council that can intervene, there's impacts, the public accounts committees that can go intervene. Treasury, for that matter, can intervene. It's not our problem. That's probably going to be wrong. About 2-3 years ago, when we presented, our AG presented our audit outcomes, it got to a point where our portfolio committee chair said, AG, this can't go on. Surely you must also do something. That was the start, one of it was about 2.5 years ago. That was the start of a process to look at the powers in our act. So when you talk about consequences, we now find ourselves not just in the place of transparency and reporting and adding credibility to reporting, but we find ourselves in the space of consequences. And that's what this is about. But before we get carried away with consequences, let's think about what's in the legislation already. So we're going to talk municipalities. I'm not going to bother you with PFMA. There's things that's been in the Act for the last 20-odd years. Accounting officer, thou shalt do. And it says wonderfully basic little things like internal control, financial risk management, prevention of unauthorized irregular expenditure, full records, take disciplinary action, establish audit committees, just go on. That's been there for the last 20 years. There are certain things about financial misconduct. Similar story. It's been in the Act for the last 20-odd years. It's not new. Always been there. Now, I guess when an accounting officer signed up to do this job, he or she knew about what's happening in the Act. Yet, if you look at audit outcomes, now this is combined PFMA, MFMA, you don't necessarily see that they've been all that successful. I'm worried about those guys. And you just got to stop me before I fall off that. So we're not so sure that accounting officers necessarily got there. And I'm sure that if they were sitting in the audience, there may be one or two of them in the audience, they will tell us about the reasons for not getting it. The fact of the matter is not happening. If I show you the things that sit together with those outcomes, you understand how bad it is. Remember on the first slide, when I started listing responsibilities, I need to prevent irregular expenditure, fruit listing, wasteful, all those things. Look at irregular expenditure over the years, again combined. Don't worry about the figures or whether you can read the detail, but the trend tends to be a little bit upward. No, it's going up. So irregular expenditure is that nasty thing, the thing that media loves. It says expenditure and contravention of that. That's all it says. Fruit is wasteful, well that one is self-explanatory now. We've wasted. We had a party that we got now. That one, the trend is upwards. And unauthorized expenditure, that's the one where we exceed the budget. Also upward trend. Except for the red one, national government is being pretty good at not exceeding budgets. Upward trend. Maybe this last one deserves a little bit of an extra comment. Obviously there's an element in there of we've got a crisis. You think Mesa a year ago, fires, you've got to put out the fire, you've got to fix stuff. You've got to get the electricity and water back. There's a reason sometimes for overexpending. But the majority of that's not in that case. So we've got trends that go upward over the last 20 years. So we know that accounting officers has not necessarily got around to doing their thing. We know that councils is not necessarily intervening. We know that impacts, the public accounts committees at municipal level is not necessarily intervening. And we know the treasury is not necessarily intervening. Which then left us, we were the only guys that could solve the king. So now Parliament said, well, then we give you powers and see whether you can go in. But if you unpack that thing, if you go back in this whole story, the accounting officer does his or her job, the Treasury doesn't need to intervene, Council doesn't need to intervene, and the AGSA doesn't need to intervene. Now, I said it last time around when we sat in this audience, the best thing that would ever happen to the PAA amendments is we never used it. Because then people would have woken up and they would do their jobs.
Now, I know there's a favorite argument that people would say, AG, Mr. Makwetu, now that you've introduced this thing in law, it's going to be a very unattractive thing to be an accounting officer. Because hell, we're going to be personally liable for some stuff. Isn't that a really, really bad argument? In other words, for the last 20 years, it was okay not to do my job, just for the fact that the AG wouldn't be there to punish you. I dare anybody who's willing to stand up and try and justify it. The job has been the same, the expectations been the same. The fact that nobody kicked your, you know what, because you didn't do your job, it's of no consequence. The fact that the AG's now got the right to be ill should actually not make any difference. Anyway, here's a really scary one. And I think last year that's the one that we debated the most. So we've got that upward trend. In other words, people, accounting officers know about what's gone wrong. They've got a quantified number for irregular expenditure. But if you look at irregular expenditure, unauthorized expenditure, fruit is there. The red tells you the amount that they've not acted upon. So if you look at the total, let's just have irregular expenditure. That's a nice big one here. 194 million irregular expenditure. And of that, 89% is not being actioned. There's less than 9 million that's been recovered. There's a small portion, about 3% that's condoned. I can't even see on that line that anything's been written off. So what does it mean? We know what's gone wrong. It's quantified. If it's quantified, we know which contract, which project. All that you need to go is go and say, Prof. Alex, you're responsible for this. What happened? And if you can't explain, there's disciplinary action that needs to happen. That's how bad it is. We know what's gone wrong, yet we've not action. Right, now, let's talk about us. Let's be selfish for a moment as AGSA. This is what sits in the Act. We need to audit and we need to make sure it reports to accounting officers. We need to talk about our audit opinions, material findings. We need to try and get people to commit to do things. So it's not like we just dropped a technical document in front of you. We come talk. Trust me, 50% of what we do in our office is about talking to people and warning proactively, even before we come on. People that's been on the receiving end of our orders know we don't just arrive at the end. We arrive at least 2 times during the year and we say, we flip through your records, we think you're heading in the wrong direction, fix. Yet we still sit with outcomes like that. Here's the full journey of what we've done so far. We've been to every municipality in this country at least once. Now talking about the Auditor General, talking about the engagement team. They're obviously at a very regular basis. We've got the status of records review. We go there, we get our hands dirty, we try and warn proactively. We've got roadshows after every trip. What we're doing here is a roadshow. We talk about these outcomes to try and get people to commit. And the list goes on. So it's not for a lack of trying. Then in 2016, we saw Chief Justice also pronouncing on this. It's good if you want to read through this. He's saying, guys, it doesn't help that we audit and there's no follow-up. And this follow-up is not just, yes, we take note of it. Or yes, you know, we've got a nice press release from the council side. So this is unacceptable. Next year it's going to be better. You're actually going to do something. It's going to happen. Consequences are going to be bad. Manda Kimi always says that corruption will continue as long as the consequences are small. If I'm going to pay a small price, but I spend 6 months in jail, yet I can take 5 million rand, I may consider it. You put me in jail for 10 years, I may not take that. Consequences are going to be real, and I suppose that's what Chief Justice said here. So there's the crux of what we can do now, and it's not rocket science. And I stress again, this is a consequence of last resort. Accounting officers can do their jobs, in which case it's will not kick in. Regime can go intervene, whoever can go intervene. For that matter, use a public or use Solga can go intervene. We can do 3 things. We can refer this to somebody else, it's a better place to deal with this. There are areas where we haven't got expertise. And if we can find somebody with better expertise, we can refer that to them to really get to the depth. We are not forensic auditors. We audit. So if we need an extra layer of investigation, we can refer. A classic old example of, yes, but what about the fact that it's the accounting officer that's actually committed the fraud, or caused the problem? Or for that matter, the minister, the executive that's overruled. That's a favorite argument. Well, if it's a little bit in your face, well, let's refer it. The SIU is going to get stuck in this by presidential proclamation. then the minister can be subject of investigation, which we may not be able to do. The second one, that binding remedial action. So now we like the public protector. Remember, up to a year ago, we could recommend. We strongly suggest now that we've seen that this and this happened, that you should be doing that. The accounting officers look at it. They read the we strongly recommend and say, you didn't say thou shalt do, you must. Therefore, to be ignored. But we can now go and say, in terms of the Public Audit Act as amended, thou shalt do. It's the way that the public protector dealt with it as well. Eh? So we can do that. And in the last instance, if you've not taken action based on the remedial action, we can also do what the EFF always suggests, and that is say, pay back. So think about soccer. It's a classic yellow card, red card type situation. We audit, we recommend. Accounting officer, strongly suggest that you do. 6 months later, I can visit you again. Say, have you done? Say, no, whatever, you just recommend it. I issue you my yellow card. Say, remedial action, falls by law. Hopefully you get the message, hopefully you get a bit of a script because it's law. But I come back in 6 months' time. Another thing has changed, was instead of Prof. Alex being forced to go act against Manda, it's now about Prof. Alex. He's not acting, he's not on his job as accounting officer. Then I can go ask Prof. Alex to pay that money. And obviously there's the normal procedures of you can go through presentations, we can talk. We're not going to just do something wild. There's enough processes in the Act that allows us to deal with proper process. Obviously, if you've got evidence that it's not you and it's somebody else, well, it's the process will take care of it. But that's the 3 powers that's out. Refer to somebody that's better placed to deal with this. Enforceable remedial action or recovery of the money. As a consequence of the last resort. There's a new thing, if you like, called the material irregularity. There's the definition, and you can see it goes quite wide. So these are the things that will trigger these 3 actions. Non-compliance, contravention of legislation, fraud, theft, breach of fiduciary duty that leads to material loss, misuse or loss of material public resource, substantial harm to public sector institution, or the public is quite wide. It's quite wide. When we get to implementation, I'll talk about that a little bit more. These powers are new. Kicked in on the 1st of April. So everybody that before the 1st of April already commented and said, AG, you've got the power, why are you not acting? Well, we had to wait for a presidential signature. This thing only came into law the 1st of April. And let's be clear that now we've got the power, now we can do certain things. So when I talk about the MFMA outcomes and stuff that you came here for, that happened before that. So our processes were not necessarily fully geared to that. So when you look at this, these are things that we can still not necessarily deal with in terms of the powers. Things that happen now in PFMA as we speak, the audit that's playing off now, that will certainly happen in terms of this. We're piloting this time around, so it's not necessarily the full scope as yet, but it is the risky parts where we're playing around with this. And we're focusing on the things that's there in the normal audit process, the normal non-compliance, the normal irregular expenditure. We're not necessarily covering the full extent of fraud, etc., etc. So it's the first step. And maybe just a last reminder, Mujahati was a member of Executive Council for the Department of Health and Gauteng. Something good to remember, the fact that this is all about the good democracy and the fact that we're proud of our democracy and we should protect our democracy. And if we didn't believe it, all certainly believe it. And hopefully what we see in the powers that I've just outlined show that we're quite serious about protecting this democracy of ours. So that's the new things that we've got. The teeth that we allegedly now got. I stress again, it's really powers, but it's powers that ideally we should never use. A lot of people tell us, Age of Ghana, where we've looked at as a benchmark, tell us that this thing should be preventative. People should look at it and say, I do not want to be personally liable for this thing. Let me rather do my job. That would be the ideal situation. Anyway, so that's what we had as part of the first part of this presentation. Let's go back to the things that was promised to you, the outcomes. But now when you look at the outcomes, this is the depressing picture. Let's look at it thinking about accounting officers that need to do their jobs. and think about the reaction that we as auditors need to have. Oops. Right. Oh, for whatever reason, the percentage is jumping out of sync there. Let's stick with the colors just for a moment. You guys know the colors by now. Green is cool. Green is what we want. Green means that you get financial management right, performance management right, and respect for the law. It's like little Linda. She goes and she buys the bread, she brings the right bread, she brings the change, she doesn't buy drugs. That's the guys in green. The yellow is you get financial management sorted, but you're a little bit wobbly when it gets to your honesty when your performance report, or you're a little bit wobbly in your respect of the law. And then when you get to the rest of them, they mess it up completely. If you're in that purple section, there's definite errors, and we can pinpoint them and we can quantify them, and you know, there's no doubts. The red ones, the disclaimer ones, the ones where we don't have records, we can't find anything, we can't actually order. That's quite bad. And then there's a really serious one, guys, and it's this lovely little blue one. Those of you that's old customers and coming to these presentations will know that we have blue as part of our colors. So blue, and you can see blue is growing. Blue is a very cool development. Blue is where people just decide not to play, so they don't use financial statements for. They give it to us late. And there's a very easy answer to that. And you'll see it in previous GRs that we've analyzed that. That blue is a loaded section. The culprits tend to sit in that blue section. It's very exceptional that people are late because they've just had judges that didn't have people or something like that. There's normally a story. And for years and years, that was an easy way to get out of order. We do it late. We know that the agency is going to do these outcomes by a certain date. So therefore, we just do not talk about these. Next time around, we don't have a chapter that follow up on the ones that we've not studied. We just do the new batch. So nowadays, we add a chapter and say, well, let's analyze what's happened with these guys. This time around, it's difficult because it's a bunch of municipalities. But if you think about PFMA, you have typical customers like Ross, like South African Airlines, there's always a story to be told to the guys that's in blue. The frightening development. That's guys that resist accountability, basic accountability, to the extent of not even presenting something. That's little Linda going to the shop, but she does not come back. She does not bring bread. She does not bring change. She just collapses. There's the spread on provinces. Again, same colors. You can see the good guys tend to still sit in Western Cape and Gauteng. Western Cape had a bit of slippage on procurement, but we don't think it's necessarily a systemic failure thing. It's probably a little bit uncomfortable. The rest of the guys probably quite bad. We've hinted at the guys that's in the bad in Free State and Northwest is probably the ones. Interestingly enough, probably the ones with question marks around politics are also quite intense. But that's our spread. But you'll also see that there's interesting places that's got green flags. So you, for example, remember that for years and years, we talked about the Eastern Cape being quite red. Right? You see here in the Eastern Cape, there's a couple of green ones floating around. Right? So one of the green ones, well, it's just okay. Normally it's easy to talk about the Western Cape and Gauteng, and everybody will say industrialized, the richer provinces, the good systems. It's good arguments to make this sound easy. Even Eastern Cape, there's a small little place called Senku. Senku now. So if you're at Tatiala and you turn left, right west, you find Senku. There's all opposite there on the little hill. Senku is not the richest place. Fairly rural. They've got a couple of amazing things. They've got stability when it gets to the municipality, stability when it gets to the politics. Even though they sit in a very highly contested political area. And they do the basics right. And they've been doing the basics right for quite some time. So it can be done. It can be done in sync. So both of the examples of the Western Cape and the Gauteng have a field day explaining why they're so cool, but then explain sync. It can be done. There's a very loaded slide, and if you have you guys got copies of the slides? I'm sure we can figure a way to make sure that we get all of it. But you should be able to find it in the general report as well. So financial statements, poor quality. People don't even bother to give us quality documents for audit, let alone hope that they will get a clean audit. Performance reports are absolutely bad. That's the one place where you want to shine. If you're a politician, for God's sake, forget about accountability. If you've had successes, brag and be honest about it. Tell them about the houses that you built, the potholes that you fixed, and the electricity that you brought to everybody. Okay, but if you mess that up, you must know what happened back home. Compliance with laws, really, that's bad news. It's across. Supply chain management is the biggest drama ever. I'll show you some of the stats. Consequences, you've seen the slides earlier on. People just do not bother to actually get stuck in these things. They know about the problems, they know where it is, they know the projects, they know the people, if they don't take action. We see it in the fact that it's become very difficult. Intimidation and threats, that's par for the course. You know the emotional story that I could tell last time around that I was here. One of our ladies that got shot on the bell and reserves. Thank God it was only once that happened. You can imagine. Suddenly audit is not such a attractive. You guys talk about the accounting officers that feel threatened with you, and speak about auditors that feel threatened. Somehow we still audit. You can see that we can clearly show that the financial health is in trouble. We know there's a lot of municipalities that's in trouble. There's a huge list of guys that just don't have cash anymore. And we can see that it's hitting service delivery. We don't normally talk about service delivery, but we can see that there's just not money to do certain basic things. We can see that certain basic things with service delivery is going wrong, and you can read all those stories in there. Again, it's probably not worth trying to do this because you can't read on the board, but the things that I've just talked about, financial statements, performance reports, etc., we've just listed some of the issues that sit under it, and we've plotted across all the provinces where those come to. So you can see, I'm not talking about issues that's just happening in the monetary provinces. Those processes indicate that it happens almost everywhere. You can see that the notable gaps sit in Gauteng and sit in Western Cape. You can see guys maybe at odd moments, Western Cape, KZN, these days they've got a couple of open spots. But these things are things that happen across the world. Even Gauteng and Western Cape, let's be honest, even though we show them as the best possible, they have got moments of discipline slipping, etc. So it's not perfect games necessarily. But let's use the two slides here to show you that these things happen across the board. So if you want to make a call and say, is this by exception? It's systemic. It's the way that unfortunately the civil sector functions. So the lack of accountability has become culture. Same thing on the next page, we've analyzed affecting consequences in difficult environment. It happens across. So here's some interesting stats. When we talk about financial statements, guys are pretty disciplined in giving us financial statements and good quality. Well, first of all, by the deadline, around about 90%. Quality doesn't look that good. You see, in the current or last cycle, about 20% of the guys give us quality financial statements. After the audit process, where we try and engage and we point out errors and we ask them to fix it, goes up to 50. I suppose you need to ask a question about the other 50. Point out errors and they don't want to fix, says something. Yeah? Performance reports, again, preparation, 97%. That's actually impressive stat. It's an impressive stat, guys, if you talk about other countries. Lots of other countries. We just spent time in New York last week looking at the United Nations SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Lots of countries don't even have a performance report. Let alone the discipline of submitting. But we need to go further. It's a little compliment that we've got this, but we've got to go further. And again, there's a massively worrying stat of 11% quality of performance reports. That's really bad. If you look later on reliability, you will take 50%. Usefulness, you will take 50%. These are things that go back. Biggest issues is procurement, supply chain management. And these are the stats of what go wrong. The one on the left, 3 quotes, declaration of interest, supplier tax, affairs not in order. Now let me be quick, especially because we've got academics in the room. It's not happened here, but it's happened in other provinces when we face academics. Supply chain management, have you looked at the regulations? It's so damn complex. Who the hell can do these things? I've got a pretty easy response to that. Look at the issues that's going wrong. It's not the complicated stuff that's messed up. Declaring an interest. I've got a family member that works. My wife works at the place where I'm going to buy. I need to declare it. I don't get that right. Tax affairs and audit is easy. Do you have that form from such or not? It's not complex, no? And you can look at a couple of others. Do you manage the project after you've awarded it? I know if I pay money that they can build at my house. every afternoon when I come back from work, I will go check. So why, if you build a road layer, don't you get into a car and go check? What's your accountability then? You're spending money, you should get something that's at your house. If you not go to that example, you know what happened at houses, and they check very well. Roads that haven't checked stuff. There's irregular expenditure. You can see the same upward trend that I've talked about. I'm not going to go into that. There's my favorite slide. They know about, but they don't act. The red tells you. Red tells you. Take it back to the powers. If you're an accounting officer and you don't want to be personally liable, deal with the red. How difficult is it? You need to do just one thing. Deal with the red. We know that we're getting into financial health trouble. I've said that again. You can see the guys are starting to take longer and longer before they pay. A couple of years ago, when we talked about the 30-day rule, people were very much said, "Yeah, AG, but we missed by a day or two. It's not that bad." On average, they pay after 174 days. How many is that? Not as good, but that's about 6 months. So if you're a small little supplier, one-man show, if you sold water in a rural area, that's your only income. You get paid after 6 months, you're out of business. Probably after 2 or 3 months. Wouldn't say a lot. So that's the type of things that's happening financially. There's an interesting one, and it goes back to the powers again. So this is where we've analyzed the assurance provided by different role players. In other words, do you get stuck in what you need to do? You can see we start off by senior management. Do I need to repeat the color coding? No. Green is the good guys. Red is the bad guys. No. So green, senior management, that's the assurance. That's the level of confidence that they inspire in this process. Look at municipal managers. We talk about 8%. 8 out of 280 municipalities where we think that accounting officers are doing their bit. The interesting one, guys, and don't ask me to explain it, I'm not an auditor at all these 281, is that mayors seem to be getting stuck in it. So if you want to talk about political will actually looks a little bit better than accounting officers coming to the table. You see internal audits and audit committees, they sit around about 29–30%. Coordinating departments, 7%. So that's the likes of Treasury or that get stuck in trying to solve these issues. You see treasuries and office of premiers that's getting into this. And then you see independent assurance. You see the role that municipal accounts municipal councils play, public accounts and portfolio committees. And these are interesting ones, pretty high stats. Right? Municipal councils, 26%, 27%. So there's people in the political game that's starting to get their hands dirty. That's our assessment of, having done an audit, of how well these guys have come to the party. My challenge just on this slide is take it back to what we're saying on the amendment slide. The amendment slide says if you do your job, you will not get in trouble, you will never enforce this. Yet we sit in the picture like this. You understand why we've got this out, and you understand why we need to do it. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the story what I wanted to bring to you today. The fact that accountability is not a very weird thing actually. I know there's difficulties and intricacies, there's challenges. I'm not trying to underestimate that. But remember my little dinner goes home by a bread story. That's accountability. Money in, money out, you need to know where the money goes. I showed you what's in the amendments. The fact that it's a last resort consideration. The fact that you can refer, that there's money remedial action and that we can recover money. And then I showed you outcomes that show that we've got very bad news when it gets to municipalities, but it's accountability, well, outcomes, but yeah, accountability does not do good. It's deteriorating for that matter. And you've seen that it's not that we're dealing with undefined thing, unquantified thing. The facts are there. The facts are pretty credible. It's been through a lot of QC processes. We know that this is happening. People know about things like irregular expenditure. They can pinpoint it to the project. They just need to do it. And then which thousands of people now so that's the part that we're trying to do. We're trying really hard to not just be auditors, we engage a lot, we talk a lot. We sit with every auditee. If they're interested, we point out to them way in advance what we think is going wrong and give them a chance to fix it. The audit process is designed like that. I know some of you don't like the fact to allow people an audit process to fix. At least it gets us closer to credible financial statements, but there's that benefit. Despite that, this is what we sit with. That's what we think that we should do about it. It would be great to hear your comments on what we think we're going to try and do about it. It would also be great to hear what you think other people can do. We'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jan, for that very interesting presentation and good lecture, good lecturing skills. For those who didn't attend a course yet at Wits University, you got some learning today, right? So we're not going to switch to the app right now, but we're going to have 2 responses from our panelists. But I'd like to invite, if there are 2 women on the floor that would like to provide a small reflection or response or question, and then I'll take the 2 panelists and then we'll open up for questions. Is there any? You wait for to open up the questions? You've been volunteered.
So should I ask a question?
You can, and we'll bank it.
Oh, is it? Okay. For me, it's the certificate of debt. I just need clarity on that. Who's responsible? Who's going to receive that certificate of debt in terms of the department or the state-owned entity? Is it the department? The division that's level for non-compliance, or is it the accounting authority?
So maybe when we bank it, let's add it to the thing about how the mechanism would then work, and who is the fine eventually bears the consequence. Thanks for that. Any other women in the house that like to offer a comment? Please introduce yourself.
Afternoon, everybody. Morning, everybody. My name is Linda Cherian. I am the manager for short courses at the Wits School of Governance. My question is, have we ever considered this level of skills sitting with the people in the municipalities, and whether that contributes to a lot of the issues that are arising, if maybe people actually don't know what they're doing?
Yeah. Thank you. Or to put it another way, to use the Linda analogy, maybe Linda's too, and you shouldn't be sending them to the shop to buy bread. So with that, let me introduce our two panelists. Professor David Everett is the head of school at the School of Governance. He has over 25 years of experience in applied socio-economic and development research. No, I have to tell you. No, the bios are here. The events people put these things together. So it's not for you, it's for the hard work that they've provided. He has experience in political and governance reform, designing and implementing monitoring systems, and program evaluation across sub-Saharan Africa. He was the founding director of the Gauteng City Region Observatory. He sits on the advisory board of the International Sociological Association and serves on the board of the Kathrada Foundation, and now chairs the National Stats Council. So welcome, Prof. Everett. Our next panelist is Councillor Calvin Johnson. He has been the MMC responsible for Budget and Treasury Office in the JB Marks local municipalities since 2016. He's the former district coordinator of the Department of Health, Northwest Province, coordinating all government programs and activities across municipal spheres, just different departments and legislatures. He's the former director and MEC for Health in the Northwest Province, coordinating those programs, and also the former Deputy Director, Executive Council Support for Premiers and MECs. And so with these two colleagues in the room, we'll ask you to, you feel free either to sit there or to come up here to deliver your your response.
Good morning. Okay, yeah. Good morning, colleagues. I hope that you are all well. And thank you for the opportunity to respond on the audit opinions and the audit outcomes as presented by Mr. Jan van Schalkwyk. I would have loved to share with you on a screen our responses to this, but I promise you next time it's going to be much better, much better. I've got a few responses that I would like to share with you. So if you have listened to Mr. Jan van Schalkwyk's presentation, you will realize that I will also respond on the issues, and Linda will absolutely also come up quite often in my response. Linda will be the star of this presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I am representing SALGA. If you don't know SALGA, SALGA is the South African Local Government Association, coordinating all municipalities across the country and responsible for that sphere of government. You will understand there's local sphere, there is provincial sphere, and then there's the national sphere. Now SALGA is coordinating this local sphere, and that is municipalities. Municipalities. With regard to the outcome as presented by Mr. Jan van Schalkwyk, we say as SALGA, as this champion, custodian of the local sphere, we say we are noting the audit outcomes, and I must confirm that we are not happy. We are completely not happy. You cannot be happy if you are presented with such a picture. It's a cause for concern. Because that in itself, as presented by Jan, it's a setback towards achieving this vision of a developmental stage. It's a setback. And we are acknowledging that yes, indeed, it is a sin. It is a great, great concern. Now, this developmental state built on the pillars of clean governance and financial accountability, it's compromised. That slip that little Linda is bringing back to the where she must deliver the bread, if that slip disappears, you cannot account. There's nothing to look for. There's nothing to do. Now the legislation says you must take care of that slip and you must record it and you must file it and you must keep it safe. So when the auditor comes and asks for the slip, so that the auditor can reconcile it, but did you buy the bread? You must be in a position to say, here is the slip, take it. But that slip is not there. That is the problem. The audit outcome, the results also confirms that us as SALGA must strengthen our municipal audit support program to municipalities. It's clear. We must go into municipalities and support them. And we must support them based on this multidisciplinary approach where we look at leadership, governance, institutional capacity, and finance management. These are the 4 areas that we say as SALGA we need to take responsibility and we need to strengthen that intervention into municipalities. Ladies and gentlemen, the AG report also highlights the lack of accountability. You have heard it from Mr. Jan van Schalkwyk. There is just a lack of accountability. But most concerning, most critical, listen to this one. In some cases, there's a total disregard for the general's recommendation. Complete disregard. And that is a great concern for SALGA. Point number 4, despite this regression and despite this gloomy picture, we are saying there's still hope. We are saying there's still hope. There's 22 municipalities that has improved. Now, if 22 can improve, what stops the rest of other municipalities to also improve? 11 moved from a qualified opinion to an unqualified opinion. And with the assistance of SALGA, a municipality like JP Marks moved from a disclaimer to a qualified report. So that means your municipal audit support program is working. But we acknowledge that we must strengthen it. If you look at Jogapi and Gertsibanda municipality, two municipalities, they moved from an unqualified with findings to an unqualified with no findings. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is commitment in some municipalities, and we say, let's step into that commitment and let's hone in on it and focus on it. The Auditor General indicates that 63 municipalities regressed. Now that is where we say we are concerned about that. Of the 257 municipalities, only 119 received unqualified audit opinion. 54% of municipalities receive a qualified or a worse outcome. Now that is a huge concern. It must be a concern for everybody. And SALGA acknowledges that yes, indeed, it is a concern. Now, for us, as point number 6, the key concern for SALGA is one simple fact: non-compliance to legislation. That MFMA that was highlighted by, just non-compliance to it. That is for us a huge concern, and we are extremely worried about the situation. The AG shows that irregular expenditure declined from listen to this figure, 29.7 billion down to 25.2 billion. But if you look at the amount of money, it's still unacceptably high. It's still unacceptable. Yes, there is a decline, but it's still unacceptably high. Now, the Auditor General's finding revolve around 4 issues that we want to highlight. The quality of your annual financial statements, the quality of performance reporting, as highlighted by Mr. Young, the financial health of municipalities, and the high levels of UIFs and wasteful expenditure. That 4 areas indicates the gloomy picture that you have just seen. What are we doing as SALGA? We said we cannot just leave it. We developed a record management toolkit together with the Auditor General to say, go into municipalities and improve on your record management. That slip, that little letter is bringing home. That slip must be accounted for. You must go and file and put away that slip. Improve your record management. In other words, it must be readily available when the auditors comes and says, where is the slip? It must be readily available. We are saying, let's improve on the supply chain management. And you have heard the concerns about supply chain management. I'm not going to repeat it. You have heard the gloomy picture. We have also looked at a diagnostic assessment toolkit that will focus on asset management. And municipalities are really doing extremely bad on asset management. And you will find that it's an audit opinion almost every year. So we said, let's design this toolkit and let's make sure that we assess municipalities. But most important, you have heard about political will. So SALGA says, let us assist councillors, public representatives with oversight on financial management. Let's equip them with the relevant skills and expertise to play their oversight role so that we can account for the money entrusted to us. In addition, we know the lack of accountability and consequence management. I'm not going to repeat what Mr. Yana said. There is absolutely a lack of accountability and consequence management. We as SALGA are extremely happy with the Public Audit Amendment Bill, because suddenly now, an accounting officer must behave Because powers has been given to the Auditor General to say, pursue him, go after him. And you must not think that by resigning you are going to go and no. They will pursue you even way beyond your lifetime in the local, they will pursue you. Because that powers has been given to the Auditor General. So we as SALGA welcome the public amendment bill. We are supporting the Auditor General, and we are saying, let us increase, let us improve on the accountability and consequence management. In addition to that, we have also developed a toolkit that will be unleashed in all municipalities so that they must understand. When the Auditor General comes and says, I need this for you to account, if you do not account, this is the consequences. They must fully understand, and they must not plead ignorance in front of the law. So we have also reacted on that one. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard about the financial health of the municipalities. Just to highlight what the AG's report is saying, 31% of municipalities is financially vulnerable. You must understand there's a norm that says for 3 months you must be able to sustain your municipality in terms of your financial ratios and norms. Some municipalities do not even have money. They go into conditional grants, they use all sorts of ways, illegal ways, to pay salaries or to redirect monies to what. So it is a gloomy picture. 39% of municipalities require interventions. Now, we agree with the AG, it's a concern. If you look at the ESCOM account, it's unbelievable that 18.26 billion is being owed to ESCOM. 18.26 billion, with arrears of 9.12 billion. The water boards, 9 billion is being owed by because municipalities are simply not paying their accounts. This is unacceptable. There's also an intergovernmental debt owed to municipalities by departments that's approximately 10 billion. So we are saying to government departments, also pay your account at the local municipality, so that we should not have this gloomy picture. In SALGA, I'm happy to report that SALGA, COPTA, and National Treasury are consistently working on improving and assisting municipalities. Again, I want to communicate with you this hope. Despite all this regression and despite all this gloomy picture, I can confirm that that is not translated into a lack or a break in service delivery. In fact, Statistics South Africa indicates that there's a marginal increase in terms of service delivery. Remember what Statistics South Africa looked at municipalities is, are you in a position to provide clean drinking water, safe clean drinking water? Are you in a position to provide sanitation? Can you remove waste? Can you remove electricity? Can you supply them? Can you supply clear infrastructure? Now, in terms of that, municipalities are performing extremely well. It's that lack of accountability and non-performance on the key legislation that is compromising. But I'm happy to report that there is no break in service delivery. And despite the fact that you will see a lot of service delivery protests, which is politically motivated, you must not be confused. Statistics South Africa looked at certain indicators, and I'm happy to report that there's an improvement, slightly marginal, in service delivery. And with this picture, SALGA is also saying that yes, there's a risk. There's a risk now for municipalities. The Public Audit Amendment Bill will put much greater strain on municipalities. And you have heard what Jan has said in terms of the accounting officer now. So it's no more business as usual. I'm just going to come, don't do my work, get paid, do not account. So it will be much more difficult for you, for accounting officers. And that public amendment bill will put much more risk on accounting officers. That I can confirm. There is a risk in there. We are also saying that in terms of, remember earlier on I highlighted the non-compliance to key legislation. Government has introduced MSCOA, the Municipal Standard Chart of Accounts. Now non-compliance to that, it's also a big risk. What we basically say with MSCOA is that a bottle of water in Eastern Cape must be a bottle of water in Mpumalanga. And similar must that bottle of water be in Northern Cape. And that bottle of water must not cost 139 rand in Eastern Cape, 12 rand in Northern Cape, and 60 rand in Mpumalanga. You can clearly see there's something wrong. You can clearly see there's something wrong. So we are saying, as SALGA, there's a risk in MSCOA non-compliance and the Public Audit Amendment Bill. And there is basically, before I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, there's two requests that we are extending as SALGA to municipalities. Just two requests. We are saying to them, please improve on your key controls. Simple. Improve on your key controls. If your supply chain management says that when a service has been rendered, and you must take this advert or slip, remember the slip, you must take it, and you must file it. Do that. Do that. Because you must come and account for it. So just improve on your control systems. And then we are appealing, secondly, we say, honor the Auditor General's recommendations. Simple. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. There's the legislation. The Auditor General is saying this, not contradicting the legislation. Just do that. Just do that. It's so simple. Very simple. And then lastly, ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, I would like to, on behalf of SALGA, congratulate the Auditor General for continuously strengthening accountability and highlight the state of local government finance management, how we deal with the public purse according to the MFMA. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been an absolute wonderful crowd. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I think my job is to make you all miserable again. Unfortunately. And Linda's not going to feature at all. I think you need to see, I am the chair of the Stats Council, so I have some sense of what's happening to these institutions. I'm not speaking in that voice as an academic, but I think you have to understand what's happening to our institutions in context, both of this country and globally. And globally, there's a fundamental attack on all the institutions that sustain liberal democracy. And this is one of those liberal democracies. And if we pretend it's not, you would have woken up this morning to hear that the United States government now murders people in the name of the people of the United States. They've brought back the death penalty. So you, as an American, you now have a government that kills people in your name. How proud you must be. Maybe we'll go from send them back to kill them all. And I'm not making silly jokes. You are watching an onslaught on basic consensus around how you arrange a state and how you protect rights within that context. And if you don't see these vignettes and stories in that context, I fear that we're missing the bigger picture, and it's going to come around and bite us rather badly. Because you can't fix in a vacuum. You can't get, the Auditor General can't fix this. any more than the IEC could fix the election. If the political system is broken, politics is where it has to be fixed. Because politics is what is attacking this. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about institutions, then about politics, and then about fascism, which I thought would be a fun way of spending the morning. Why not? In the last year, we've had Francis Fukuyama was here, we've had Daniel Kaufman, we've got my colleague Christina Duarte from Cape Verde. We won't mention football, just how well she did as finance minister. But what you learn from everyone who comes through here is that the basis of any functional democracy is strong institutions. That's civil society as much as it's formal institutions. But if you don't have them, there is nothing to stop impunity. The same impunity that allows you to draw a weapon on an auditor. If there is not an institution to protect that auditor is finished. As is an enumerator coming to do the census from my other hat. As is the electoral system. Because there is nothing to protect it. And governance is the point at which power and accountability meet. And if you are not able to hold power accountable, power will do whatever it wants to. Don't be under any illusions that people work for the best benefit. I don't think that at all. I think institutions keep people in check. And that's why compliance is part of it, but having a broader culture of understanding our institutions, I think is absolutely critical. I know that I always use Timothy Snyder, who I think we should all read. But he makes the point, and I'll quote him a couple of times. He says, the mistake is to believe that rulers who come to power through institutions will not turn around and destroy those institutions. So I'm a Democrat on the way in, but you may turn around the next day and I've just destroyed the institutions that I said I believed in and you used to elect me. Just remember that. So the way I look going in is not the way I'm going to behave. If you allow me to destroy the institutions, and it's up to you, me, all of us. It's not going to be an Auditor General by him or herself, or their staff. It's going to be everyone getting together. And that's where I think that the point about accountability is so important. And so in that way, the stories we've been told are in a sense, obviously very real, but they're also symptoms of a deeper malaise in the body politic. So let me just remind you that what happened in the election, if you remember, was a claim, the election we just had, a claim that people were allowed to double vote. As a result of which the election was declared unfair and unfair by very small parties, who we all know were funded by different factions, let's not be naive. But for the first time since 1994, they were able to actually question an election result. Why? Because the IEC has been systematically underfunded for the last 10 years. Who saved the day? I'm happy to say Stats SA, the Statistician General himself did it, Busengo. But we've been underfunded systematically for the last 10 to 15 years. And to give you an indication at Stats SA, we have a 20% vacancy rate. We have not been able to employ or promote anyone since 2015. All posts have been frozen. Now, if I have a bright young thing who wants to be promoted, she or he has to leave Stats SA. So if you're looking for state capture, you can look where the AG goes and you can see these large amounts of money. That's theft. That's not state capture. State capture is when you throttle the institutions that hold the democracy together. When you throttle the IEC so that it can't afford the technology it needs to run a modern election. And I don't mean going into e-voting. I just mean basic technology. So those little clicky boxes actually talk to a central point. Rather than all they did was like registered you in the voting station that you voted in. They didn't do anything else because there was no money for it. The ink was the cheapest bid because they had no money for it. So people complain about these things, but if then you come to Stats SA and you say, come and help us. Well, the only way we did that was with the goodwill of staff who were willing to work on the weekend, which they do every week, because Stats SA itself is on its knees. You cannot run an organization like that with a 20% vacancy rate. So see these in that broader context, where the institutions that we created for ourselves, Chapter 9, we claim that we're independent, but we're not, because we're dependent on the state for our budget. If the state chooses not to give us money, we are dead. We are finished. And that's the uncomfortable position of saying I'm a Chapter 9 or I'm independent, but I'm not autonomous. Because I still have to go cap in hand to my minister and say, please, rather than bail out Eskom to quite that extent, could you possibly allow us to employ a few more people, upgrade our technology, actually hold you accountable for how you're bailing out Eskom, and for what happened at Eskom, and for holding those people accountable and preferably seeing them in jail. And that's what everyone is looking for, is people in orange overalls. So one thing you're not seeing, however, and I'm willing to bet, even with the new powers, the people you will see will be people lower down on the feeding chain, who will be hung out to dry. And the people at the top will still manage to slide away. And you'll probably still see them sitting on the benches in Parliament. You wouldn't believe that I actually did polling for a political party as well. So let me talk about. So, you know, that story of the election, I think, really matters. Because if you are in a position where you question the election result, which we have not done since 1994, it was questioned by AGSA, and basically it was Johan Krichler who kind of just said, I will not take questions. This has been declared free and fair, and we got through 1994, which was, we only just made it. But after that, the IEC was probably the most trusted institution in the country. Not in this year's election, as you all know. So just remember, you can really fundamentally shake the basis of the state by throttling the funding. You can steal the money, but that's not why you're throttling all of us institutions. So let me ask you a slightly different question. Who thinks the ANC really, really wanted to win Gauteng? No one? Oh, okay. One person. Okay. Two. Well, I do the polling for the ANC in Gauteng, so I mean, you know, it's my job to make the ANC win. I'm outing myself, so you don't need to worry about it. There are other skeletons that I shan't bore you with. But every time the Premier and I would think this is the way to go forward, these are the statements to make, someone would put the kibosh in. We made the statement that we were going to win because so many white voters had decided they liked the ANC. Within a week, no, within a day, there was a statement from the Julie House saying, we don't want dirty white votes. And they went. They disappeared. They never came back. You don't do that when you're in election mode. You don't say to people, I don't want your votes, because you won't get them. Who had an interest in the ANC not getting 50%? Answer, the politicians who had not made it to #1 on the list. The politicians who saw David Makura as a problem rather than a democratic solution. If you come in at 47, 48, the ANC will still choose the Premier in a coalition with the EFF, or whoever they choose. And suddenly, in a coalition, all sorts of little deals can be made. And I'm not going to say coalition equal to Chani's position, because I know Chani's position, and I was told this predated that. But look at Chani. Look at what coalition government does do to you. If one party is dependent on another one, do you think the parties are holding each other accountable to good governance and clean audits? No. They're just worried about how the hell they're going to get elected again next time now. And that affected all of the parties. The EFF was probably the only party that was not, and it had its own internal divisions, but it was not as divided as the ANC and the DA. The DA was fundamentally split over the issue of race. I might have thought that would be occurred to them before the election. But with all of these broken parties, the people who could see where the money was understood how to play a much more sophisticated game, which was coalition politics allows us to topple state institutions, to feed at the trough, to take what we want. And we need to be very aware of that, because that's the game that's being played today as it was before. So let me, the final point on this before my very last section, is that if you ask who is giving society the compelling vision, so it was the New Dawn about a year and a half ago going into NASREC, and we all thought, ooh, New Dawn. Well, we're still waiting, and the bloody sun's not rising, so it's a very old dawn by now. Thankfully, I don't think it's sunset yet, but who knows. Certainly the EFF, forgive me, those are my colleagues who vote EFF, their vision is know your enemy. That's all they tell you. Know your enemy. It's our land and our jobs, and you know by looking at me, I'm not part of our land, right? Right? So what does Snyder say? Fascists do not develop policies, they identify your enemy for you. And that is what the EFF does. It's an Indian called Praveen Gordon. It's not just a man who does things, it's an Indian man. So Amandia suddenly becomes part of how we're all talking again. And his race or ethnicity suddenly becomes an indicator of whether you can trust or not. That is a desperately destructive message. So the compelling vision is actually coming from the AG's office. They're giving a more compelling vision than almost any political party. The DA is completely introverted at the moment, trying to understand, does it believe in redress, does it not? Well, how do they deal with black? Oh, there are black people in South Africa. What do we do about them? We don't know. Sorry, I'm very rude about it here. The ANC's not much better. Look at them. They're having a working committee today to decide if Derek Hanekom was trying to form a splinter party and should he be kicked out. And by the way, he happens to also to be white, and as I am in the Kathrada Foundation, and so he's associated also with that Indian guy. You know, that Indian guy who's trying to mess up the project, and the project is still. And you can see, as Praveen said, join the dots. It was interesting to hear Jacob Zuma saying he joined the dots. Unfortunately, I don't know what picture he was drawing the dots in. It wasn't the one we were working at. But Snyder makes the point that authoritarianism begins when you can't tell the difference between what's appealing and what's true. Okay? Just think about that. You hear a message that sounds right, that doesn't mean it's true. This is the era of fake news. This is the era where, because I've said it, it's true. And if it sounds right to you, then cool. We can all go on this app and you can all rate people. I've just rated myself, by the way. I didn't know you could do that. So I just gave myself 5 stars because you can do it. None of you can say I don't deserve 5 stars because it's there, it's on the app, it's real, it's done. So be wary of these kinds of messages because I think they're fundamentally disruptive to us as they are to the rest of the world. I gave you the American example. Your state now kills in your name. In Britain, you now have the most right-wing Tory cabinet we've seen since Thatcher. And he is saying, I will get out come what may. He's got a Home Secretary that wants to bring back the death penalty. And she happens to be a woman of colour. And so somehow it's okay that she supports the death penalty because look, she's diverse. Right? So you play these things off against each other and you hide what's really going on underneath. Look at Marie Le Pen. They were the runners-up. They're the fascist party of France, and they came second. And you can go across Europe and you'll find the same story. So don't imagine that this is just an ANC, DA, EFF, South Africa, we haven't grown up. This is a global phenomenon where there is an onslaught against institutions and against governance. And you have to understand that if we do not look for our allies wherever they happen to be, we're not alone. But we need to reach out for those allies and find alliances that will actually help us get somewhere better than we are now. So let me end, Chair, before you show me the 1-minute sign, which I'm sure I deserve right now, by saying that I've made the point about, I'm on the fascist point, but my last two points are from Timothy Snyder, again. One is any election can be the last election in the life of the person casting their vote. Just remember that. It comes to all of you. 2021, we're all going to go vote for local elections. If this project that's happening right now carries on, there may not be another national election after that. It can happen, and it happens all the time. Go to Turkey and see what fun it is to live under a right-wing dictatorship. Okay? It happens all the time, so just be wary of these things, because these are symptoms of a deeper malaise. The issue is not that we can't trust people with money, which I don't think we can. There are deeper forces at play that are trying to break apart the very essence of the state. So he says, Snyder, and he's talking really about America and Europe, he says to experience its destruction is to see a world for the first time. Okay, so as it's destroyed, you're realizing what you're losing. And he says, and he's talking about his generation, and he's my age, so inheritors of an order we did not build, we are now witnesses to a decline we didn't predict. Okay, so they inherited that post-war consensus, the United Nations, what we believe in rights, the UN Charter, the separation of powers, all of those things, and they're being taken away, step by step by step, brick by brick. And my only point to us is, that doesn't even give us a way out. We wrote the Constitution. We were alive. We wrote the RDP. We were here. And we're watching it being destroyed in front of us. And until we realize that the onus is on us to act, we're going to be heading down exactly that same pipeline as the rest of the world. That's the chair.
Thank you so much, Calvin and David. You gave us some highs and lows. So I don't know if we feel thoroughly depressed or thoroughly enthused that we must reach out to find well-meaning allies that are progressive, the kind of remnants that remain. So how are we going to work this? I'm going to go to this app thing. And let's see, there's some nice questions. So you won't be able to necessarily see it. I'll read them out. Let's start with, well, there's quite a few. How can we hold accountable, who can we hold accountable for the mismanagement of funds within municipalities? May be related to the first question that you asked. Are the decisions of the advisory committee subject to review by the courts? The advisory council, would it be chaired by a judge, a retired judge? And so the kind of efficacy of the process again, that maybe Bindu spoke about. To Councillor, theft of municipal services is rampant. What are councillors doing to garner public awareness and to encourage their public vigilance? Again, to Councillor, are you able to please commit to sharing a report of the municipality supported by SALGA in the 2019 year and the improvements achieved? Again for you, what is the number of municipalities that have outsourced the revenue or debtors collection to suppliers who take a percentage of the revenue? In your honest opinion, do you think there's a glimmer of hope? Sure. That's a sobering one.
Yeah.
What happens if the accounting officer doesn't have the money to pay, or doesn't have the skills, or the system doesn't work properly? CFOs in the public sector lambast irregular expenditure definition as reported. What is the AG doing to close this expectation gap? What is the AG's prognosis on the prospect of accountability and the subsequent recovery of missing finances? Prof. Everett, question for you. Are the men in grey not muted? And maybe even partisan on key matters? Local government rot is at the crossroads of service delivery. Are you shouting enough? And then the latest question, what is the Auditor General's prognosis on the prospect of accountability and the subsequent recovering of missing finances based on the new powers acquired? So, really nice. Most of those from people in the room? Yes? So before we take that, and let me take Chair's privilege to kind of, not to sum up, but to put them into kind of loaded names. So some of the questions are about the administrative capacity or the institutional capacity to deliver or to support this kind of revision. So, we maybe breathe a sigh of relief that this new system or this new amendment has given the AG's office more power, but the how-to is now the question. Will it, for example, create another layer of another administrative burden? And how able is the AG's as an institution, in the way that David was speaking about it, able to meet that expectation? As well as the ideas about how able as local municipalities, there's all of these, you were saying, toolkits and toolboxes that's been designed. Is this also not just another layer of administrative programs or things to do that would just be related to a compliance exercise? And so it's about this good system, but then the ability and the systems into it, the actual outplay of how we reach outcomes. So I'm not gonna. I'll maybe leave these questions up for people to respond to, but of course you in the room, because we don't want to have a webinar. and we want to hear the face-to-face.
Can we argue for the sake of the three people in front, we deal with what's there already?
Yeah.
Because you're overloading us.
Okay,
Can we
So-
have a quick snap at these?
sure. And maybe team them
Yeah.
rather than respond to each one
Yeah.
directly. So you've heard, and you can respond to more ones that you can respond to. Would you like to say?
Let me take a guess since I've spoken up. You said we need to theme them. I think there's one theme that all three of us spoke about. And it's not just up to the AG's office, it's not just up to Solga, it's not just up to whoever, it's up to all of us. Prof, you made the point, all South Africans, all people in the world for that matter, we need to stand up. It can't be, forgive me for the person that asked that question, if somebody asks, the definition of irregular expenditure is wrong, and AG, what are you doing about it? Right? Knee-jerk reactions to me. But what did the CFOs do? It's their job. Why are you asking the AG to do it? So, for me, one of the biggest things is we all need to wake up. We're all in this together. Prof, you've talked about the challenge. You've talked about the things that I cannot talk about. But we need to stand up and be counted.
Yeah.
All of us are here. It's wonderful to talk about the AG does not go recover debt. But the facts are clear. Nothing prevents a citizen, a Solga, or anybody else to stand up and say, on these facts we go. You know, the DA has made charges and making people to fall for much less. This is pretty strong. Anyway, there's a couple that I just quickly want to react to. There's a question, I think, at the back around level of skills. Yes, it is a root cause, by all means, and it may not be ideal. I'm pretty sure that if you go to the National Treasury, you get the analysis of who's got the right qualifications, etc. Forgive me for being cynical. Linda bringing the slip back, keeping the slip. You know how old Linda is in my example? She's 10 years old. So she's at grade 4 or 5. You don't need a qualification to keep a slip. By all means, again, I take it that there's big issues over there. I would degrade my own qualification if I pretend that accountancy is just about these one or two things. But some of the things that's going wrong are far more basic than that. Again, you've heard Prof talk about the context of that. The certificate of debt, I think in front here, sounds dramatic to people, but let me say my old mantra again, if you do a job, this is not even in the equation. The intention for the certificate of debt is to lead to the accounting officer. Because the accounting officer by then would have had at least 3 warnings to try and do. Okay? But the whole process of law, the whole thing about reviews, all those wonderful things that exist in law, for any other thing that exists, the AG don't have weird powers that supersede all these things. We want to take the AG to court, it's a judicial review, those things play off. And there's enough checks and balances in the process anyway, I think, to take care of it. My answer would just be when you get the first warning, act. Then we would never have to get to this point. So that sounds like a dramatic thing, but it isn't. Even if a certificate of debt is issued against you, and you know very well, you wake up by then, you know where the pain is, well then go fix the pain where it originated. Let me deal with the IR definition of irregular expenditure. That's such a wonderful argument to say the definition is wrong. So think about the essence of what's going wrong. You ignore the law, you pay your buddy for something that is a fraction of what's there. That's the essence of what's set in there. Let's say we change the definition tomorrow to something not so harsh. 80% of the problems still remain. You know, it's a weird argument. It's only theft because the definition says it's safe. There's a far more basic answer. Is the money there or is the money gone? Is the service there or is the service gone? And then you know, you don't need a definition. But again, back to the overall theme, it's not just the AG, it's not just Solga, it's everybody. You guys can do a lot. Let me answer that one question on your behalf. You can do a lot of toolkits. If people don't pick up the toolkit and use it, the mayor does not insist on it being used. It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I can't change it, you can't change it, Prof can't change it.
So true. Thank you very much for the questions. If you look at the white paper on local government, it acknowledges that indeed this local sphere, it's a complex environment. You cannot just treat one issue the same as in another municipality. It will never ever work. It's a complex environment and you need to look at each and every situation on its own merits. If you look at a road that has been built, there's the road. The road is there. There was no loss of income to the state, nothing. It's there. But because you did not put controls in place, you did not file the advert. So when the auditor comes and he cannot file the advert, that whole transaction will be reported under your UIFs and wasteful expenditure. Now this is what we as SALC says, improve on your key controls. Improve on your key controls. And it's not complex. We agree with the Auditor General, it's not complex. It's simple things, but because within municipalities it is made difficult, hence we sit with this specific issue. If you look at JB Marks for an example, JB Marks has been doing extremely well. Then the merger with Ventersdorp came. Ventersdorp comes, joined us with a debt of 100 million. They owe Eskom 58 billion, Inca 20 billion, the water boards 10 billion, and of course Ventersdorp is going to bring down JB Marks. They are merged now. And on top of that, the whole building, with documents, everything, has been set alight. Yeah, down to the ground. Every single document, it's gone. So there's no waste that we can tell the AG, here's the document. There's no document. Document is gone. It has been burned by employees, our employees, and by councillors. Our councillors, yes, they burnt it. They burnt it. So there's a lot of, there must be a paradigm shift from the politicians in terms of how we are pursuing this developmental state that I've earlier mentioned on. Because all of these things compromises that developmental state. And I'm also saying to the AG, you look now at the 10-year analysis audit. Right from the beginning, you could see the regression, up until 10 years. Surely something must tell you, there's something wrong with the system. This system must be redesigned. So the whole funding model for local government, by the way, local government is only receiving between 4 and 4.5% of the fiscal equitable share. And it's been pushed up to 9% by your conditional grants. So they are getting extremely 0% in terms of service delivery issues. And on top of that, your district municipalities do not play any role in the life and the health, financial health and well-being of local municipalities. They spend 99% of their budget on salaries. Now, if that does not confirm to you, listening to this, that the whole system is designed improper and it needs a review, then I don't know. Lastly, in terms of reporting, you know the media reports, JB Marks, these are the 5 biggest municipalities in terms of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. JB Marks 1.5 billion, Masosana 4.5 billion. What they don't tell you that all of this, the UIFs, is coming on from 2008. Now remember 2003, the MFMA was introduced. People were still struggling to interpret and get the legislation correct. People were still finding their feet. They don't tell you that there's a lot of cleaning up that must happen with the AG. We attempted to do with the AG a lot of cleaning up, and the AG said, prove to us that indeed you put some effort in to get these documents and to make sure that yes, you are addressing it. But because certain councillors has got interest, they said, no, we are not going to write off anything. It must be investigated. But you are not going to get the documents. There's no documents. From 2008, there's no documents. In Ventersdorp, the whole building has been burnt. You will never ever get any documents. But they still said, go and investigate. We investigate. They said, no. We want a forensic investigation. We do a forensic investigation. We come, we say, there's the things. Let's write off. And remember, when you write off, you must still, that same submission must go to Treasury for condonement. You can't just write off. Treasury will still come back to you and say, no, 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 no. This one, go and investigate. So we must also be careful on what the media reports, because the media reports that you have wasted 1.5 billion in this year, but they don't tell you it's been coming on for over 10 years. I think.
Thanks, Councillor.
I'm not sure who the men in grey are.
You're the only one who's saying that.
You're the greyest.
I'm the one in grey.
Yeah.
I thought I was short, not I thought.
Yeah.
I would say very briefly, I think the point, so I'm not doing my emails, by the way, I'm reading your questions, honestly. You know, local government rockers at the crossroads of service delivery. I think people, no, I don't think people are shouting enough. I think many of us have, I think 1994 was the point at which many people felt, at last I can actually relax now. We've got a democracy, we've won, you know, it'll all be okay. And NGOs disappeared, community-based organizations disappeared, faith-based organizations retreated into just doing what they do. And I think the need for vigilance is even stronger now than it was when we were fighting apartheid. Because you've got to watch a democratic government much more carefully. The Audit government, you kind of knew what they were going to do. They weren't subtle about it. It was just a question of opposing them. But now it's how do you manage our people when they're in power. So we have lots of students obviously who work for government. I had a student who worked for one of the metropolitan municipalities that is in the coalition, not necessarily in this province. And he moved on to a job at an entity that was managing some of the service delivery. And within a month he went back again. And I said, why? He said, I got too many death threats for not giving the tender to the right people. And so, yes, that's to say we do ask, have you got the money? Can you do this service delivery? How many people are connected? But SATSA doesn't even think about it, and wouldn't be able to, isn't qualified to say, can we see the entire chain, please? We want to see who got this job, under what conditions. So Gauteng may do open tenders, but the cities aren't. So Gauteng province, if you've got a big tender, it has to be open in public. Joburg, Tshwane, all the rest, they haven't followed suit. So tenders can still be rigged, and people are getting death threats. And good people are flooding out of government, because the cost of being in government now is your life. And that's not worth it. And it's threats against your children, threats against your wife. You'll get a WhatsApp that will tell you, that's your car, that's where you park. That's your wife, that's where she goes to work. There's your children's school, there your children are, there's the picture. You get the message very quickly. If we do not start protecting those people and acting against that kind of thuggery, it's going on. So no, we're not shouting anywhere near louder. And I think the rot is incredibly deep. But the rot is coming from political entities that a coalition allows you to entrench yourself at the point of awarding tenders. If you are entrenched, suddenly patronage becomes available. Suddenly you can get all sorts of people on your side, because you can award tenders the way you think they should be. Well, not all of them, you're not dumb. But you'll do certain key tenders, or go to people who will then fund your party when the next election comes. And so the cycle becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. You siphon off money here, you siphon off money there. You learn, I'll finish with one analogy. In Kenya, where I did a lot of work for a long time, the road from Nairobi to Mombasa was appalling. I mean, it was, anyone who's ever driven that, well done to you. It used to take about 18 hours. And it's the same as driving from Joburg to Durban in terms of distance, so it should be 5 hours. And every year or so, they would put out a tender to redo the road. And someone would win that tender. And they would put that much tarmac on top, and then leave. And all the rest of the money they'd steal. And of course, rainy season would come, and the huge dongos would reappear, the tar would wash off, and they'd issue the tender again the next year. Someone would win it and do exactly the same thing. And the only time that stopped was when the Chinese arrived and wanted to do business. And they said, we'll just build this road, we're sick of this. And they just built the road at their own cost, supposedly. And then they said, right, we've given you your road, now let's do business. And deforestation in Kenya has just been the direct result of that relationship. So you get yourself into these situations and you end up with unholy alliances that make the problems worse, where it looks like you're actually fixing it.
Thanks, Professor. There are a few hands. Let's see. So we'll take So let me say, Alex, let's take yours last, so you can give a comment and a question. And then second last, we can take Christine Duarte, former Minister of Finance, Cabo Verde. And then so let's take the side of the room first. Let's take 1, 2, 3. Right? And if it's yourself there, next to you and in the front. For now, and then we'll take the side. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll give the panelists time to speak after Alex and Ms. Duarte has spoken.
Thank you so much, Chair.
Please introduce yourself.
All right, will do. Thank you so much, Chair. My name is Balsam Fuge. I'm the current SRC's academic officer. So thank you so much for the invitation and the engagement. My question is to AGSA, all right? And then, so mine is to ask, what powers does the Auditor General, has as far as infiltrating spaces where the public feels that accountability is there, but is, very much practiced at a very little, implementation? What powers do we have in infiltrating those spaces? Can you just be there and be like, okay, there's this allegation that is posed to this company or this organization, then we can audit and do whatever that the public feels, because there's little or no accountability to it.
Morning, everyone. Is it still morning? No, good day. My name is Malukera Kholani, and I come from Gauteng Provincial Treasury. We are one of the coordinating institutes that provides oversight for municipalities in Gauteng. The question I have for AG is with regards to the amendments to the PAA. And the question I have, and I will try to put it into context, is with regards to accountability. Yes, we agree the amendments will add value to our municipal processes. However, we have systems that are already embedded within local government. And I'll just pick two of those. One of that is MPACs. They're called Municipal Public Accounts Committees, which are required by law to investigate and to try to recover the monies that are, I'll say, lost in the process of trying to procure services, goods and services. And as well as, the role of the audit committee. And I'll also include what National Treasury is trying to bring into play, which is called disciplinary boards. So I'm just trying to connect the dots in terms of how will AGSA complement those already existing or pre-existing structures within the municipality. And I also wanted to find out from AG with regards to the review of key control accounts. Currently, we haven't seen much of it in our municipalities. I just wanted to find out what led to the sudden disappearance of such an exercise. I'm well aware that we have status of records review, which is currently being done, and my municipalities are happy about it because they are deriving value from that. But can you just, on high level, give us the impact of the review of key control accounts as a project? One last, to Southern, a colleague from Southern, as a comment. I feel like we are trying to intervene in various ways and formats, and we are just not finding expression in terms of coordinating our support. I'm Treasury. I work with Copter. There is Southern. All of us, we have programs which are trying to resolve municipal programs. However, I feel like we are not finding each other there. How about we come together, deal with MOUs, and make sure that whatever support we are going to come up with will be more coordinated, and so that it will yield results. So just as a comment. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Just in front of you with the white shirt.
Okay, thanks, Chair. My question would come in two folds, and would just be to add on to what he said. But we would agree that most of the problems that actually occur in our municipalities. Oh, sorry, let me introduce myself. I'm Franklin Kum Dan. I'm an independent researcher, research for public sector. So my question is, what are we going to do? What can AG or SAGA do to depoliticize the running of municipalities? Because we see that's where the biggest problem actually comes from. And secondly, I just want to find out, what is it that the Public Amendment Bill would do differently from the MFMA? Because MFMA Section 176 actually gives statutory powers to municipalities to recover money from crime misconduct. So that has been in existence for some time. So I just want to find out, what is it specifically that the Public Amendment Bill will do, and how the AG uses power differently to ensure that it actually yields fruit?
So let me just, you happen to take quite a round because there's appetite to ask. So there's those three in the corner, and then we'll take Christina and Alex, and then maybe time for just one more round because there are some more questions.
Okay, thank you. My name is Joe Mavuso. I happen to be doing this and that on capacity building. But to AG, when you audit, do you still stick to M-score processes? Because I thought the M-score was not going to allow any of these things that we are reporting, these negative things we are reporting about. If you've got money, you spend on that money, and it does, even the transaction itself will stop you from doing anything that is irregular. So how come do we have these kind of results? But also, have you begun to charge people as you're the new powers that we have? Saga, I think you, maybe in relation to that political intervention or interference in the work of the municipalities, the problem is largely with human resource, when you hire people to work at municipalities. And qualification here doesn't matter. Sit up to you've got a doctor as a municipal manager. One of the courses, of course, is theology, and I was thinking that in that there is ethics, not to do anything wrong. So what happened to the process of the minimum competency, whereby you try to train them and focus them on doing right in compliance throughout those processes?
Thank you.
Okay, good day. My name is Lawrence. I'm an education consultant. I work with schools for more than 20 years. I was just from one now. And one of the things, I don't know, is it fine now? Okay. Yeah. My question is more like on the oversight role. Like, I usually listen in our country, there are so many words that we use, like fighting corruption, accountability, and hope. Like what I say, we cannot say we fight corruption while the police are not able to do their job. We cannot say we are fighting corruption while the NPA is not capacitated to do the proper job. So now what we hear in our country is this rhetoric, no, we are fighting corruption, we are fighting corruption. And I believe without those criminal justice system being properly doing our jobs, I don't believe that we are taking seriousness into fighting corruption. I'm sorry I have to go a step further, not to offend any one of you guys. I was looking at the appointing of the new justice minister. You know, when we're moving forward, we're saying we are going to be serious about corruption. But I was looking at the experience. I myself as an academic, I know the guy who's a justice minister is still young, inexperienced, he just graduated from law. but I believe that the issue of corruption was not being taken seriously by appointing a very young person who has no experience in terms of dealing with the deep-seated corruption that is prevailing in our country. That I believe we can talk here, but if there's no political will, our talk is in vain. So that's what I wanted to share with you, that how serious are we, especially in the oversight role that you are playing in terms of fighting this scourge. Because if there's so much impunity, the person is working in a municipality, he's got the guts to do something that he knows is wrong, because he knows that even if he does that act, no one will take him responsible for those actions. That's my comment on the oversight role. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was you? It was this gentleman in the front. We were doing a diagonal.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm Chabom Timkulu. I'm from Soto Municipality. Maybe most of you will remember that Tatani municipality. My question is not necessarily a question, but it's a comment, because the other guy from Treasury covered my question. Salga, don't you think, or one of the contributing factors to these poor outcomes could be the patterns or the methodology or method that is being applied by the AG when auditing? I'll make an example with the receipt. Last year, Auditor General wanted to have a receipt with its supporting documents or with its quotations and what have you. And this year, the Auditor General only wants to see the receipt. So I think it's one of the contributing factors that led to poor outcomes. I thank you.
Thank you. Let me just do two housekeeping things. So the marketing department has told me that it should be ending here about past. I want to give the speakers enough time, but I'd like to also just point to the other questions, not necessarily. Some of them are comments, and in saying so, let me also protect the speakers and Alex and Christina. She is going to speak. Hello. No, the lady in front. She's going to speak now. Let me just protect the panelists by saying, if there are some technical questions, particularly for the AG, like the finance people need to talk about, then I would suggest, bank those technical things for later. If they are useful for a broader audience, then the panel will exercise discretion about what exactly they respond to. Simply because we want to also get to the two respondents from our opening speaker and Ms. Duarte. And if you will indulge with panelists, can we hear from them? And some of their comments might even cover some of your questions. And Ms. Duarte, would you like to go first? Sorry.
Yes. Thank you. Good morning to everyone. I will try to be as quick as possible. First, congratulations for such impressive report. It's by international standards. Congratulations. I have a couple of questions, comments. First, we all know that transparency does not deliver automatically accountability. Is South Africa an example of that? Because by reading this report, I got the feeling that you have the systems to provide or to supply this type of information. You have the systems in place. But these systems, for some reason, are not helping delivering accountability. What is missing in this equation? And I believe we need to bring political science to this equation. I agree with David's intervention in another 50%. We need to bring political will, political leadership to this transparency, accountability equation, and you need to bring assertive civil society to this equation. Let me very quickly compare Cape Verde. I know, sorry, I forgot to identify. Cristina Duarte visiting research channel. Sorry, I forgot. Let me compare Cape Verde and South Africa. In 2001, Cape Verde had political will, but no systems. And this political will built the systems. And in 2008, we have been graduated to a middle-income country, and Cape Verde is in the top 3 in terms of governance, transparency, accountability, and political freedom. So I would like to know your opinion. What is missing in this equation in the South Africa standpoint? Another issue that I'd like to bring to this transparency, accountability equation is the question of democracy in Africa. In the past 30 years, we import, basically, Western models of democracy. But we import the formal side of the Western model. Just the formal side. The vote, the elections, the millions of dollars campaigns, etc. We did not import the content side, the substance side. This is a coincidence? No. This is intentional. The system, and I'll be very open, the capitalist system has reached a level that needs to. Africa is the last frontier for the system. So you have an African democracy that has been implemented and structured in a such way to pave the way to intensify globalization in Africa. I think we Africans, we need to be conscious of that. Otherwise we'll be missing the picture again. So I think it's important that for that equation, transparency and accountability, I think it's important to start making the distinction between formal democracy and organic democracy. Because if you notice in Africa, democracy is not delivering institutions. How come? You have been, I think, today, more than 75% of African countries are democratic countries. But the institutional level of these countries is still very, very low. So I believe that for this equation, again, transparency and accountability, and to get to the root of the problem, we do need political science. Otherwise, we'll be missing. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Alex?
So in some ways, politics is about how you get certain kinds of institutions in place that can disperse power and create structures that are in the interests of society rather than in the interests of a few people. I would want to just start with an example that some people may be aware of is Petrobras in Brazil and Operation Car Wash. What's interesting and Petrobras was the sort of state-owned enterprise responsible for the state oil company. And what you had was a sort of prosecution process that began around the people in that organization that ultimately put Lula in jail, resulted in a president being removed from office. But the interesting thing, when I've looked at that case, is that Petrobras effectively got distributed between 3 political parties who used to essentially were responsible for the patronage of different divisions of Petrobras. This meant that the governing party at any point in time understood that there was this systemic endemic corruption that they never pursued. It was just accepted that that party will extract from that division, this party will extract from this division, that party will extract from this division. So the idea of a multi-party democracy protecting you from institutionalized corruption is challenged there. That is in our future. Is that the fact is that if we do not create a different set of institutions and understand a different institutional mix, all of the political parties will be in on it. And that will be what we will be facing. The issue that was also interesting in that example is how they were all unraveled. There's a cartel that was behind the pricing models, all the tenders associated with Petrobras. Every one of those CEOs ended up in jail. So did the president, who's sitting in jail now. So did a whole range of other people. The CEOs, the heads, the CFOs of Petrobras all ended up in jail. And there was a process of flipping people, getting them over, prosecuting them, and no political interference could block that process. We don't have that here. When we look at the Auditor General's report, we can see exactly who should be in jail. As I was saying earlier, when I look at provinces, and I look at a province like Free State, when I look at Mpumalanga, when I look at Northwest, there's premiers that should be in jail. Quite obviously, why are they not in jail? That's now on the question of what's missing in our accountability framework. I've indicated 4 arms, and if any one of those 4 arms is not working, we will not have accountability. So I'm distinguishing between a framework, which is a system, and the effect, which will be accountability for good governance. So we've got an arm that's missing. Our supervisory structures, the structures responsible for applying consequences are not working. We have structures around transparency that are working. We had a public protector that worked once, and then it was overturned. That's one institution that could apply consequences, and it had a massive effect when just that institution worked, and 4 other major state institutions didn't, like the South African Police Services, the Hawks, and the NPA. Now we're trying to repair those. We have a dysfunctional public protector, and it shows. It shows. Those are the institutions that also need to work, and potentially our democracy that has to reinstitutionalize them. So I think there is a large question as to what we need to repair going forward. But it's not just, and this is the final point, it's not just about the capacity of managers. The capacity we get is the capacity the system is institutionalizing, and many of them are just corrupt. They're not trained.
Thanks, Alex. So we're going to go to the panel now. That's the last round of comments that we'll take simply because of time. Colleagues, as you wrap up, also put your closing comment in there, and we'll give you 2 minutes each, or up to 2 minutes each. You can take 30 seconds. And if I can ask that Jan concludes, feel free to leave some questions hanging, because, at the School of Governance, we're all about raising questions, and putting the question on the table, that's the uncomfortable idea, that doesn't need a resolution. And so let's take it in that kind of spirit.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. My brother, the methodology used by the AG will never ever go and audit you without sitting with you and you agree. The issue there for municipalities is to communicate. And the AG will even give you 4 or 5 days and says, I need this today, but I'm going to give you 5 days to respond. Our municipalities do not respond. They disappear, they go and leave when the AG is there, and that is where the problem is. That is, the AG goes strictly according to what the law says. That's number 1. Number 2, the local government sphere is the most highly regulated sphere on the continent of Africa. They even tell you when to go and smoke and where. 20 meters away from a door, there must be no draft, wind draft. You must smoke there. You must go on tea that time. The most highly regulated sphere on the continent. The legislation is there. Everything is there. The regulations are there. But because we do not comply with key legislation, as I mentioned earlier on, we are sitting with the situation here. As I said, political interference, the law is there. Nothing has changed, the law is there. The law says, do not appoint this person if he doesn't meet the competency of this. Still appoint. That is the issue. EBSCO, there's 2 issues that I want to encourage municipalities. It's all about seamless integration. Remember I said the water bottle in KwaZulu-Natal must be the same water bottle in Northern Cape. Seamless integration. And live transaction, you must be able to see this person procured a water bottle now. And the fact that we are not reporting, we do not upload our data streams, we don't upload as municipalities. That is where the problem is. Remember, it was a financial transformation introduced by government to make the seamless integration much more easier, performance reporting, everything. But because we do not want to report, we're sitting on this problem. There's one of the biggest threats to our democracy and this developmental agenda that we are sitting with, trying to pursue, is the issue of silo mentality and silo planning. Our silo planning budgeting cycle is not coordinated. Everybody's doing his own thing. If the MEC wants to bring in section 121B, he knows he must consult SALGA, he knows he must go to NCOP and consult, but because they're this powerful politician, they don't consult, they just introduce. Silo mentality, silo planning. I thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think Christine is exactly right. It's an interesting notion that you can be transparent but not accountable. And I think political will only emerges when we as citizens threaten to take our votes away. That's the only time that politicians ever, or if we're marching on the streets in large numbers. Otherwise, there is no interest in serving us. There is a duty to do certain things. And so I think the importance of political engagement and involvement by citizens and residents, not just by looking at our leaders and saying, why don't you do what you're supposed to? If we don't hold them to account, certainly AG is not going to be able to do it by just as an office of state, and no one else is either. And Alex's example is an interesting one, but of course as a fascist leader of state who's paying back his enemies by putting them in prison. So there's kind of two sides to that story as well. But yes, we had a public protector for a while who held the tide. But every other institution had been corrupted, collapsed, under-budgeted, underfunded, mandates crossing, and now she's gone, and now we're hoping that the NVA can suddenly rescue us. The only people who will rescue us are us. Okay? It's about having your civil society organizations reforming, organizing again, energizing again, and getting out onto the streets. If politicians do not feel threatened, there is no incentive to do the right thing. If you think like Socrates, that if people know what is right, they will automatically do it, I think he's been proved wrong for 2,000 many years. So he's 2,500 years. So don't worry. My last point would be about trying to be positive about this, since I've been so deeply positive all morning. You know, if you think about the Zondo Commission, and all the others, the PIC committee, there's however many commissions there are. What this particular president has done, in order, obviously, he's done a political calculation, but he said, let's just make it all open. Let's just hang all of our dirty laundry out. And I think that that is an incredibly brave move. It's politically costing him enormously. ANC votes, I can tell you, just diminished with every new revelation. We were doing the polling all the way through Zondo, through Agritsi and all of those appalling human beings. All of them seem to be old, white, and fat. I didn't quite get the connection, but apparently that's what you need to be really corrupt. But, you know, as each revelation came out, so the ANC's numbers dropped. We started at about 62, ended up at 57. So he took that risk. But I would love to know what would happen if the French president dared do that. Or if Boris Johnson said, let's open the British economy to scrutiny, let alone America. That's going to happen. Let alone, what about our democratic brothers and sisters in Canada and Sweden and Denmark? You know, why aren't they doing this? Because transparency may not bring accountability, but I think the light of fresh air kills an awful lot of corruption. It doesn't make you accountable, but it can limit your sphere of movement. And I think in that way, Ramaphosa has done something that no other country or country leader is doing right now. And that is our ray of sunshine and our bit of hope. Through all the horrible stuff we hear coming out, the fact that we're hearing it empowers us. And we know now how to act as citizens.
actually a lot that I want to say, but I'm glad that we talked about the full scope. Let me first of all acknowledge the fact that Cape Verde's done some stuff like that, and they've got the results to show for it, and it's about the will of people, it's the will of the politicians. Without will, it's not going to come anywhere. Prof, what you're saying about citizens standing up, it's exactly the truth. We can talk about all the other stuff. Systems will not solve it, so you can ask me questions about them, Mrs. Cohen, and we can talk for hours around it outside. It's not going to solve a problem that the person that handles the system still around. Full stop. Full stop. Just adding on to what you said, for me, one of the glimmers of hope is that we've actually got strong civil society in this country. Think about Mpanda, think about a couple of these others. Well, the guys actually got out and do the wisdom. Civil society should not underestimate that. But the active citizenry would really do these things. Couple of smaller ones that I think is important to do. Councillor, it's not criticism, but I'm very scared that you're saying that we can fix Linda bringing back the stuff, everything is there. Yeah, but it's not. Linda's going to bring the stuff back, because normally Linda doesn't bring it back.
Yeah.
The road tend to have potholes, so it's a slightly long story around it. There was a couple of really interesting questions around the amendments, and I think you've pointed out that there are provisions already. Yes, but the provisions didn't work for 20 years, which means somebody's not done. It's the only reason we ended up. Let's be very clear, we didn't want these powers, but if for 20 years things are dysfunctional, somebody's going to ask the question some down the line. It's like a rugby match. We all know rugby to some degree. If the number 9 behind the scrum misses the tackle, you hope that number 10 is going to do it, or number 12 is going to do it. So let's make number 9 the counting officer, number 10 treasury. You know where we are, number 50. We're the guys that's got to make the last tackle. We prefer not to tackle. We want number 9 to tackle. It's as easy as that. So the stuff's there, and I would be the first one that say, great stuff if they actually apply that. That's first part. If we never apply it, fantastic. So you talk about the fact that there's guys that's out there doing their jobs. They are investigating. They are trying to recover money. If they are really doing it, they are doing it with full seriousness, they're having success, and we can see that, we won't get it. We're not going to double up. If somebody's doing their job, we'll allow them. Number 9, you do your job, you tackle, I'll stay out of it. If you want me to tackle with you, cool. But if you show that you've got it, you've got it. I'll stay out of it. We're not going to duplicate. Let's be quite clear about it. Status of records versus key controls, I suppose it's a technical point. Key controls was in the old days where we just did a very basic test. Status of records is supposed to be all-encompassing. If you've got status of records, you should by definition have key controls. If there's a disconnect, let's talk about it outside. There was an interesting question, which I think the lady can help me afterwards outside. When there's allegations, when there's things going wrong, can you step into it? Let me give you a general rule. So we get lots of complaints, Monday, you know better than anybody else, where it's not just clear-cut financial stuff, so that we sit within our mandate. We, the concerned community of Matapia, all things that XYZ is going wrong. We will do a couple of things if we get an allegation like that. We will always factor that into our risk assessment. Even if it sounds like something that's not our job, we will filter it into our risk assessment so that we can look at the audit process. It may not be directly ours, but it may hint at something. So it will always go in our risk assessment. There's a rule for auditors that say, wherever you hear something that sounds like a risk, you need to act on it. So if I hear something I will hear it right, I'm going to take it back to the office and I'm going to deal with it. So we'll factor it in. But at the same time, lots of instances we need to respond back to people and say, this is not our mandate. We'll look at it in the audit, see where it goes. But this is not ours, this is public protector, this is SIE. We're very disciplined around saying to people, either we can deal with this, if we can't deal with this, this is where you need to knock it. So that's the general rule, but the allegation we won't just let slide, even if it feels that it's outside our scope. I think I've got to most of it. The closing words is probably very similar to what you said. We've all got to step up. We've got different roles. I sound pretty selfish if I say, don't ask the AG to do everything. Don't ask the AG to go change the regular expenditure type. But it's true. We've got a specific little job, Prof. You've also said, we've got a specific job in this bigger setup. We'll show up and do ours very well, but then other people have got to do it as well. You're right. We've got the fantastic thing from a political point of view that there's openness, far more than we've ever seen. We haven't got an MPA that's functional, but the process to get to it for the MPA sounded very credible to me. There's moments where we are clearly stepping up to do these, allow everybody to do their bit, argue, shout, scream somebody's not doing their bit. Don't sit and wait for a system to fix it, for the AG to fix it, for the business school to fix it, for Salva to fix it. Do your bit. Scream and shout if somebody next to you is not fixing it. But we all got to do it. We've got a fantastic country. I travel overseas quite a lot. You've heard it from my embarrassing little CV up there. It's still nice when you fly across the Limpopo and you come back and you know this is my place.
Yeah.
And there's still wonderful things here. And I've still got hope for it. Hopefully all of us have got hope, even though we're quite cynical sometimes about what happens. But it means that we can't just be proud, we need to do something to protect that pride.
Thank you so much. I'm going to invite up Dr. Mandar from the AG's office, who's the business executive in communication, to offer a vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Program Director. And if there was position 16 in Rugby, I'll be playing that. Taking absolutely nothing, but just doing last words to thank everyone who has come here. But quick two observations that are very interesting from me. The first one is that Africa is the last frontier for capitalist accumulation. Very interesting observation that I think we should perhaps take forward. Another point observation that I think we should take in the context of the discussions today is the notion of the experience against age. I think it's a question that can be decided. Some will call it ageism. I've got a practical experience on that. That I started working when I was very young. Having had an experience in Xhosas throwing stones. In the SARS corps fighting Vice Chancellor Colin Bandi, those were all very well known. In the youth league, and in all these structures, and when I started working, I realized that I could have been more experienced than the 40-year-olds when I was 20. So it's very interesting that is age, or does age equate to experience? Very interesting question that we might want to observe. I will not bore you with anything, but just to thank everyone who's taking time to join us this morning. We really appreciate it. Our mandate as an organization is to strengthen the country's democracy. And part of doing that is to create such partnerships and platforms for us to engage and dissect some of the findings and opinions we find during the course of the work. And this would not have been possible without the partnership with the Wits School of Governance. So I think I want to take this opportunity to thank you for opening the doors for us and for being a partner. We hope to come back here next year to have this engagement. So I think we deserve a big round of applause. In particular, I would like to thank the panelists, Jan, David, and Calvin for sitting in front of us and exposing yourself and giving us your views on difficult questions. I think you also deserve a big round of applause for that. Program Director Karen, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. It was sometimes difficult because there were so many questions coming to the fore, but you held everything together for us. We really appreciate for that. We thank the AGSA team, led by Frida, for putting this thing together, working together with the Wits School of Governance team. You guys have done fabulous work, and we hope to work here as an organization. We are already successful with our social media platform, Scholar on Twitter. We are on Facebook, we are on LinkedIn, we are on the website. You can find reports, you can find so many things about us. Lastly, we please ask you on the app that you downloaded this morning to give us the feedback about this event, because it is the feedback that will give us, that will enable us to have a better event next year. But to you as an audience, I really thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to engage with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Let me add two things before I close and invite you for lunch. Let me thank one of our Wits students, who's also at the AG's office, who's actually the first point of contact between ourselves. So Tidi, who's who's here and also is the editor, it's one of the editors of the publication that you'll see outside, not the report, the little publication. So thanks, TD, and thanks to the WITS marketing team, the Rato, and the interns. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Christina, for your words of wisdom and reflection, and thank you, Alex, as well, for that. Thanks to the people who introduced us to the nice app. It's a useful thing to use. Thanks to you for participating. I know we didn't get to half the questions of the hands and the people bouncing in their seats wanting to get my attention. So I apologize for that. We can only do so much in a limited time. But as you heard from Dr. Olebe, the invites are open to the AG's office to begin to engage with you in your own spaces, whether it's Treasury, whether it's municipalities, whether it's with students. And so with that, I'd like to thank you and invite you for lunch outside. Thank you so much. Please also follow the Wits School of Governance on Twitter. If you're students from elsewhere, do consider us for your postgraduate or master's, as well as the staff of the AG. Hint, hint. Thank you so much for your participation, and thanks again to our panelists.